Hey, James.
Hey, Wyeth, how's it going?
It's going good, man.
Can you hear me? I had a problem with
Yeah.
my mic last time. Good.
Yeah, I got you. Hi, Tom.
Hey,
Hey, Tom.
You look like you're in your actual home. You're no longer like a
hello, it's big
homeless person.
cell phone, which, yeah, that's true. Doesn't have anything on it yet.
We're waiting on Melissa. Carrie won't be joining us today. She's traveling. We are waiting on Melissa.
Okay.
And I think we have to have one of them here, I think.
Yeah, you should have one of the council or, one of the commissioners.
You'd think
I think
so.
so.
Yeah.
But I guess technically we do have a quorum. If it's illegal for us to be together in three, then
We have all
yeah,
the
we're having a
power.
meeting. Yes.
We have all the power right now. Let's just do it.
Wait, strike it. Motion to close, second it.
I moved to adjourn.
Second it. I guess I should start writing some notes down. Anybody else notice the waste management guys were out on Monday? I saw one of the trucks driving around. I'm like, why is he driving around on Monday? It's a holiday.
Well, I've noticed in the past too, they don't adjust your day because of holidays. So I think they just run it.
Huh.
It's probably like maybe time and a half or something.
Yeah, there must be some OT involved or something.
Yeah. Here comes Melissa.
There we go.
Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late.
That's okay. Tom was moving to adjourn. So.
Don't believe you.
No, he was.
So let's go.
All right. Melissa, are you running the ship here? I know I'm running the conversation, but are you running the agenda?
I can help if you guys want today.
Sure.
I just need to pull it up. I'm like not as good on this commissioner computer as the computer I use all the time.
For sure.
So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit clunky.
Just pulling up the agenda too. I think we need to vote on minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Found it.
From this time and before.
So first let's do roll call. I'm sorry, I'm like looking at more than one thing. So
It's okay.
hope I don't look super weird to you all, but whatever. Okay, so let's start with a roll call. So we'll just go through the list as I see us on the screen. So Melissa's here. Carrie is absent. James is here, Wyeth is here, and Tom is here. And I don't see any public.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Who's the other person with Faith Kennick's?
The secretary.
Faith is the city manager's assistant.
No. I know who she is. Is she
Okay.
assisting, or what's going
I'm
on?
sorry, I can't hear you, Tom. I'm getting some feedback.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. She just runs the Zoom for us, but
Yeah.
she just logs in and starts the Zoom.
Okay.
Yep. She helps get us started. She is the master account
Oh,
person. Okay, so let's keep going. So approval of the meeting minutes. Let's start with, I had a couple of amendments, so I just want to give everybody a chance. We'll just do one meeting at a time. So May 11th was the first one. Thank you for sending that out. James, does anybody have any amendments they want to make on the May 11th before we vote on it?
No, I think you had something though.
Yes, I'm pulling up my notes, my little notepad, and okay, so I think that the resolution number, I think we might have the resolution number off. I think let me grab, I'm going to grab my commissioner agendas. Excuse me for a second.
I think it's 5013.
Was it I thought that we should double check that. I think that the resolution number might be off. because I think there was 50 or 15 and they were sounding the same, but they were different. And I can't remember which it was. I have to go back and look at the original commissioner. Oh, do you have it, James? The original resolution?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's 5013.
Okay, perfect. So it was 50. I think it was like the 15 and so that would be number 5 on the list, and number 9, I think it says 1513. So just amending those. And then let's see. The other little, this is all minor stuff. But there was something in here where, number 11, I think it was Carrie was reminding us about walking meetings and the number of people in a quorum to make sure we didn't violate that.
Okay, just change that to Carrie.
Yeah, just change it to Carrie.
Okay.
And then can we make sure also that we have attached to the meeting minutes, like the slide deck or whatever, like the progress on our slide deck. So anybody in the public that wants to see what we were doing, we can just keep attaching updated slide decks somehow. Just they can watch our progression and see how we did it. For future committees that might do this work, they can look back and see how we did it. And that's all that I had for May 11th. Does anybody else have any suggestions for edits for May 11th? What about May 25th?
No.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the meeting minutes from May 11th and May 25th?
I'll move to accept.
Is there a second?
Sure.
So a motion by Wyeth and a second by Tom, and let's just do all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Nay, okay, so that passes unanimously. And now the next on the list is review and discuss the City of Livingston organization strategic plans, mission, vision, values, and goals statement using the attached evaluation exercise. So we can just make sure we attach the exercise to the minutes for the next time. And then I'll hand the baton to you, Wyeth, if you want to lead us through.
I appreciate it. I think everybody did. We got a lot of feedback on kind of like what's making Livingston great. We didn't really get into the vision stuff, so we'll talk a little bit about that today. I did think, per our discussion around innovation, I think we were talking about innovation and transparency, that maybe we needed to just take a step back and look at, sorry, my dog's apparently going crazy above me. I thought it would be good to take a step back before we dived into it and just kind of look at everything maybe high level and just validate the values and goals rather than individual, just so we maybe have a roadmap that says maybe this is some stuff that we need to address if we don't agree with the categories, because we've been very phrase focused. So if we could just try to get 2 things done, which would be, here's what makes us great, because we did the contrast to Melissa's point before, and then maybe look at the high level and assess, kind of just put some notes on it, like these are things that we think, now that we've had some discussion and some thought, probably aren't the right category headers overall. Yeah, the dog's going crazy. Thanks. So I don't know if you can enable screen share for me. I don't know, Faith, if you're the, and if not, I'll email it everybody.
I do not have host abilities, so I don't have the ability to screen share, but Faith, are you there? Can you help us with the screen share?
It let me change the settings. Okay.
So do you have the ability now to
Yeah.
screen share, Wyatt? Awesome.
Yeah, I do. Here we go.
Great.
So
Thank you.
let's jump down and let's look at what makes Livingston great. So that, again, I want to rephrase this, and I think the suggestion was really strong, which was, let's look at sort of the things that make us incredible, maybe instead of just the things that we're worried about, because that's what we covered last time. So I got Carrie's feedback here. Engaged, passionate, knowledgeable community, incredible landscape and environment, only year-round entrance to Yellowstone, small town with historic character. The city's very walkable, bikeable, and then close proximity to natural resources. I put the optimistic and growing economy. Otherwise, mine pretty much mirrored hers, which I did call out a few of the nonprofits that I really think add some incredible flavor to the community. And I really like kind of the history and character of the community. Melissa, did you want to add any color to yours?
I think it seems like we have a lot of overlap.
Wyatt, did you
So-
get mine?
Tom, I don't think I did, but I'm sorry.
I sent it.
Let me just check my email. No, I don't have anything from you. I'm sorry. Maybe resend it and I'll make sure it's incorporated, or you can just read us through your list.
Yeah, let me get there. I need to,
So
Cap City up there.
actually, I just kind of brought.
let's keep
It's saying-
taking
it's saying the
turns.
same- It's saying.
Tom, let's just keep taking turns, Tom, since
Okay.
Wyatt is kind of walking through it and it's my turn.
Yeah.
I think that I have a lot of overlap. I think that we have a lot of overlap, and one thing I would add is the we have, like, compared to other places, really involved community members. Like, people really want to be engaged in government and out of government, like that sort of sense of community where there's a lot of collaboration between businesses,
Yeah.
not businesses, and government, and just generally people stepping up to, like, volunteer their time and service to our community is not like other places. So it's like one thing I would highlight. Thanks.
James, I have to say I loved your the positive is the wind. I appreciated that.
I love it. I love it. It never gets dull when the earth gets blown up into your eyes. It's great. Yeah, but I mean the environment in general. I mean, I can look around and I don't have sprawl and targets and apartment complexes all the way up and over the wine glass, in Issaquah, Washington, right out of Seattle. That would be covered over there. And small size downtown people, the people in the downtown and business owners, everybody that I interact with the city has always been, they're just great people. I mean, the lady over the transfer station, like, I love running into her. And I guess lastly would just be the raw potential that we have in front of us we have a city that has had some, I don't know, small issues in the past, but we really kind of have a clear future of what we can do. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was my question, was when you said raw potential on there, what were you thinking in terms of that potential? Or is it just
So-
uninformed?
What I'm saying is that we have the ability, with being able to shape this community that we have. I'm talking about our potential with the community to form Livingston into something that we really have the ability to, like, everybody has an ownership in it.
Okay.
I guess, I mean, it's hard for me to get the words out. Like, maybe, I mean, it's just the potential there is, like, there's this underlying feeling that there's some gravitas to the town. Like, the town itself is itching to get something, but it just, there's something there, and maybe it's not the right thing yet, but what's that thing? I don't know yet. I mean, the rodeo brings in a ton of people and there's a lot of energy that comes with that, but is that the thing? I don't know.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I'm not saying anything terribly different, just in a different way. I sort of divided it into several strengths, and I think one opportunity, which is what you guys said, a great downtown. I sort of put it, a city in a landscape with minimal sprawl and the opportunity to keep it that way. We don't have to screw it up.
That's our potential.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tradition, just the grid itself and the structure of the town. I think it's an old street grid, and I think the thing that really makes that happen are the alleys, which keep the cars off the main streets, and you don't see a sea of garages, which is one of the things I think that really distinguishes modern subdivisions. Is you don't have those things. You back up backyards, and all the junk doesn't go in that could go in the alleys, dumps onto the street. So I think that's a strength. Like you guys said, an engaged population that cares about the city, a strong economy. And I think the opportunity is the growth policy. I mean, that really is a stated, adopted thing that sort of makes the statement that we want to keep it that way. And I think sort of looking at many of these statements, it's more about sort of keeping the character of the city that we know and like through while it's growing. How do we maintain that in a way that other places haven't been able to do? Because most places haven't been able to do it as they've grown physically.
I thought one thing I was reflecting on our last call, and I think James brought this up, was sort of like the rate of growth, and do we think we double in size in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or never? And for me, the reason why I thought that was kind of a compelling thing was when I was thinking about that is it seems like grappling with that growth is going to be kind of our largest challenge, whether it's 5, 10, or 20 years. And I don't know if anybody had any other thoughts on that.
I do. I mean, yeah, if you sort of put an arbitrary rate on that, or say, you say, when does the city double? Does it matter whether it's 5, 10, or 20 years?
Right, maybe it doesn't.
If it doubles. Second thing is, I think a mistake that an awful lot of people make as they're thinking about growth is they try to plan the whole thing at once rather than sort of let it grow kind of incrementally. For example, usually places zone too much stuff commercial. If you've zoned too much land commercial, it tends to sort of fill in sporadically and gets to be kind of this haphazard commercial sprawl. Whereas if you sort of say, well, okay, let's allow for 20% growth and this is where it ought to go. And when we get to that point, expand it.
Interesting. Any other just general thoughts on strengths?
I like what Tom was kind of putting to words, this idea that has been kind of nebulous. Like, what does it mean when we talk about community character? And it sounds to me, Tom, like what you're talking about really is the historic built character of Livingston, and that's the part that you're really identifying as a key value of our community. Like when you talk about alleys in the back, for example, that's a really like specific way to think about character that I haven't heard people talk about it before. So I like that.
It's a small thing and it has a big effect. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting how that, and the reason developers don't do it is they have to build an extra street. It's a little more expensive. It cuts into your density a little bit, but it has a tremendous effect.
And it's very relevant and timely with when we've been updating subdivision regulations and our code, our building code. It's really timely because these are the topics that are coming up. The request being made of the commission right now, right, is to waive these requirements and not require developers to do these things. So it's kind of interesting that you've identified that. Thank you for sharing it.
To the point of this document, I think you brought something up that's really important to me, Melissa, is that it's the fair and equitable application of the rules, right? So, you guys have set the rules down that say we need alleys, right? Right or wrong, whatever, that's the rule. And thankfully you're not, you're not moving the goalposts, which I appreciate. You're not providing waivers haphazardly, which I think the application of the rules is important. Again, I always kind of take an economic viewpoint, and you are defining an economic viability, an economic situation, and that will create limited resources that people will compete over. If those rules always change, then we really create a dynamic that's really horrible in the long run economically, because then it feels like you have to, be in the know or know something or do something a specific way to get someplace, rather than allowing everybody to kind of compete openly in that environment.
Adding to that, an awful lot of cities and actually the way Livingston grew is the grid was laid out and then it filled in, even if it wasn't even built, but the grid is the same. And it's just sort of it's applied slightly differently in residential districts as it is in the commercial districts. But you've got, a lot size that in downtown is a lot of single lots, and the prevalent residential pattern are double lots, but they're the same grid. And to your point, Wyatt, I mean, whatever the rules are, the consistent application of them makes the rules makes it predictable, and people are going to include that in their numbers, and that's going to be what they do, and they're not just trying to work around the edges, and we can get that consistency.
I want to bring in something too that James brought up, because I think it's really relevant to this conversation about another really nebulous idea is this idea of potential. And I think if I understand you correctly, James, like this idea that we're on this sort of edge of change, maybe like there's some sort of there's something happening in the world today, right? Where like Livingston is at the forefront of change. And so these decisions that we make and how we hold ourselves accountable are really important. Like, are we going to reach the potential we're trying to go in? You know what I mean? Like this, like we have a choice to make, and like, how are we going to get from where we are to where we're going to be going in some direction? We don't know where that is yet. But if we have this consistent application of our values via policy, maybe, I don't know.
That's essentially yes, that's the meat of the conversation right there, is that we haven't had a plan. The city has been around for 140 some odd years now, 140 years, and it's been just kind of catch as can. Yeah, we'll put a park over here, we'll put a business over there, the downtown's over there, but sometimes it's going to be over here, burned a little bit there. MRL leaves, everybody leaves. What do we do now? We have the ability now to form our future. That's our potential. We're building the framework so we can decide in the next coming years, this is how we want to do it.
Right.
Start the path.
Well,
Yep.
I think we did have a plan, and the plan, because this city has a very strong structure, which is that grid. I mean, it's weird. It's a physical thing, but it's the structure within everything that contains everything that happens. And it really determines it a lot, and look, I mean, you have a downtown, you have residential areas around that. There's a few sort of scattered things, and what's really changed that, I mean, this is the way a lot of cities used to be, but now we're, I think by kind of over planning, we allow sort of more sporadic things to happen. And recently, it's been sort of project by project rather than over the whole city. I mean, somebody proposes a subdivision and then they build it. Then somebody proposes another subdivision and they build it. Whereas what it really ought to be is a continuation of the same idea.
Right. When Morgan Stanley comes in and wants to put in a $15 million subdivision over on the other side of the river from the ranch out there, we have a plan that says, well, we don't have a subdivision planned out there. So you're going to have to wait until either the plan comes to fruition or you find another place that we have a plan for. But we
Right.
have, but right now they can just show up with 15 million bucks and say, hey, we'd love to build something. And we'll say, okay,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
sure.
So are you two folks kind of talking about like planned unit developments and neighborhood plans? Is that kind of what you're leaning into, that idea of when, you know, when you're,
No, I'm thinking more of like just this is the not down to the granular level of neighborhood planning, not that far down. More of this is a global framework, underlying framework of physics that manages the system. The ins and outs of the final things have to be discussed as they are. I mean, all the plans and reviews have to be done separately.
Well, I mean, when we talk about change, I mean, change is a pretty easy word to throw around. You have to sort of talk, what are you talking about? You're talking about we're going to change the population, get bigger? Are we going to change the nature of things? Are we going to change the way we do business? You know, are we growing economically? Are we growing in size? And what are the physical implications of that? But it's easy to toss around change without really knowing what it is. And I think you have to get more specific. So what are we really talking about? You know, Wyatt said the city doubling. Well, it doesn't really matter in the long term whether it doubles over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years.
Right.
The fact is you're going to allow for the city to increase by a certain amount. And I would say that it's much more effective if that happens incrementally rather than, say, zoning a ton of land commercial, a ton of land resident. But you can also establish a framework which might just be this grid. I mean, I think we ought to kind of stick with it. You know, as the city goes out. I mean, it's served us well. There haven't been a lot of places where it really doesn't work. I mean, if you need a large thing like the hospital, it doesn't quite work in the grid, but it could. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure we're kind of staying on track as I'm thinking about what we're talking about. Some of these things are already set up through our updated code, and it's really like planning board or zoning commission specific. So I just kind of want to give Wyatt the chance to let us know if this is where you want to be leading us, or did you have another suggestion of how you want us to talk?
I think the specifics, you're right, are kind of other people's conversations, but I think the sentiment is it is important. I mean, I think what Tom just said there when he was talking about like, well, what is going to change, and he gave a set of specific examples. I think that's kind of at the heart of our question, which is, you know, are we trying, and that's the reason why I brought up growth, because you've got some competing aspects here in terms of change, and it's tough to get your head around it. But I think we're saying none of us are saying we really want to see substantial transformative differences in the town. We're all saying like we really want to see the character, and Tom manifests character with alleys and grid systems because he's the architect, and I agree. I manifest it through I like to see a high degree of economic diversity with local business owners. That's kind of always I think they support the community really well, and great nonprofits. But I think the idea that we're really trying to say that there's a preservation effort associated with growth, that's at the core of what our conversation is. And if you think about our last two discussions, I think we've ended up at this point almost every time, right? So I think we're getting close to saying that there's a character that will be maintained as we grow, but we're not looking for holistic, definite, transformative change.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're if you could define change as the city getting larger, either in population or in size, you could say that the form of that was to be consistent with what's already here. I mean, it's a conservative attitude.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of consistent through all these comments and through what everybody's saying.
And I agree. So
And-
I think to the point, Melissa, like I'm not worried about alleys or grid systems, but I am worried about like concepts of character and preservation and growth and sustainability and I think those are all kind of like overly jargonistic words, but I think the way Tom said it's pretty great. We want to maintain this historical character as things grow.
I wouldn't discount the power of that physicality of something as simple as alleys.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's you know, it really does become the character of the city. And I mean, what's interesting is people, you know, like the new zoning code allows for a lot of densification in areas. You know, like everybody can build an ADU now, or a couple, maybe. But it's all happening within that same structure. And that structure is, it's almost like the bass part in a song. It's the rhythm of something that keeps on going and keeps it happening. And then the melody sort of plays off that rhythm and and can actually change quite a bit. But it's that boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom that really makes that. It's the consistency. It's kind of the deep old man river of things.
The rhythm of the alley.
What?
Rhythm of the alley.
Like your new song.
But the fact that you've got a place to put the junk and a place that can be without it.
To clean up the alley every spring is probably one of my favorite things about Livingston. I will say there's absolutely no doubt about it. We didn't have anything like that in Kennewick, and it sucked.
But you think about it, the new developments don't have them, and you drive down there and they're nothing but garage doors.
Yeah, true.
It's absolutely, it's more important than you think.
Okay. I think there's a note here, and I think Tom, I think you said it pretty cleanly, which is it's the consistent application of our existing structures that define the character of city of Livingston as we continue to grow. I mean that is I think a pretty great way to approach it.
Yeah, I think what we might have here, I mean, we're talking around a lot of things, might be the beginning of what you were, of a vision statement.
That's right. And that's why I was kind of letting this run a little bit, because I think there is a vision statement there somewhere in that phrasing. I think there's maybe a few other little stakeholders there that need to get there, but that's a future that is definable and applicable, right?
And it's, and it, you know, I'm not the greatest wordsmith, but it also can be succinct.
I agree. And I tried to give people, you know, if you looked at that, we can pop down to that real quick, but I tried to give some examples of kind of things that are recognized as objectively very good vision statements by external groups. And they're all, except for the Missouri, I didn't really care for theirs, but they're all pretty succinct. I mean, they're pretty clear.
Yeah. I think what we're all saying, if you could sort of take the key ideas, is that we want the character to be consistent with what's here. We don't want it to go too far because we don't want it to, one of the components of that character is a city in the landscape rather than a city that's sprawling into the landscape. And I'm not sure how you say that, but I think it's a totally important thing to say. And that growth happens within within those parameters.
I will just make another plug for alleys and grids. I spent some time in the Midwest, and particularly in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis had very affluent, very poor neighborhoods. And actually all my favorite neighborhoods were grid systems with alleys, every single one of them. And you can look up Woodruff Place, which was designed by a hydrological engineer. He came out to do the water treatment plant for Indianapolis and then bought 70 acres and did a subdivision. And he did these beautiful boulevard, like, double street, one direction boulevards with trees in the middle. And then behind every house, it had a garage, a carriage house at the time, and an alley. And it's awesome. It's like, I almost bought a house there just because I like the neighborhood so much.
And what's interesting, there's in like old European cities, you see some of these alleys, which used to be called the Mews. And they're sort of getting redeveloped into housing, old stables getting redeveloped into, but there was a sort of the service streets and the characters, or the character streets.
And we'll get off of alleys, but Melissa, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you'll all be happy that I believe that is part of our subdivision requirements now, which is one of the contentious things that we're grappling with as a community. But this idea of character, we want the character of Livingston to persevere as we grow. I think as some folks on this call have sort of specified what that means, I think that could be useful somehow to like bring into the mix somewhere, as like character is, again, this like nebulous thing. Like, what do we mean when we talk about character? Because everybody interprets it differently. So like, if there's some way to like help the commissioners understand, and the people that are, and city staff understand like what we mean in Livingston when we say character, I think that could be useful. So this document can stand alone and be understandable as people in these service roles come and go, like city staff and elected officials and board members.
Yeah.
And I think Tom said something about a city in the landscape, not like a city sprawling over the landscape or something like that.
A city that's consolidating itself. But, like one of the things that's a real component of character, and it's a huge difference between like older cities and newer cities, is scale. And it's something that I think most designers don't even understand very well. The good ones always do. But the older cities are made up of smaller bits that can be expanded. Or in other words, you've got, the building block of Livingston is the 25 by 140 lot. But you can, as it expanded into the residential areas, those are largely doubles. If you needed a bigger thing like a hospital then you would combine lots, but there's still the same thing. But the size of that building block, if it's small, and generally things that have a more intimate character have smaller building blocks. And that starts to lose it when you get bigger building blocks, like in strip development or in even subdivisions, when you're thinking of something in like a 10-acre chunk rather than a 3,500 square foot chunk. But that's the size of things is critical to character.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I also think one thing you mentioned to me before in the past, Tom, when we were talking about this, was not related to the city before we were on the committee, was, just to be clear, was the that
we do know each other before.
Right. But it was interesting when you brought up that building block, and that what happens is people expand that and you end up with a really mixed size all over the place. So like my house is on 3 lots, the house next to me is on 1, right? And so you've got a little house next to a big house, and it creates a neighborhood that is really, well, frankly, it's just kind of lovely, right? Because it doesn't look monolithic, right? It's all sort of divert, and the church across the street has like 10 lots, right?
Right, but if you need a church, you have to sort of find a place where you can combine that.
Yeah,
And as the city grows, there's going to be bigger things and smaller things, but the fact that you've got a 3-lot house and most of them are 2-lot houses is kind of an aberration. It's the melody within that rhythm, but the rhythm still holds the
that's
tone.
right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very interesting conversation. I think this is this is a really interesting vision statement. I think if we incorporated some of the other concepts like a fair and equitable application of our historic structures to preserve our character as we grow, I think is a really kind of interesting vision statement.
And then,
Yeah.
and then you get to the how we do it things.
Right, which is goals and values, right? Mm-hmm. Melissa, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't do all the homework. I misunderstood the assignment.
It's okay. No, nobody really did.
Yay.
Yeah.
I would want to add something that we talked about at a previous meetup about this is like visionary, right? It's not how we get there. It's like where we want to be or where we want to go. I would love to see something about how we're a welcoming and inclusive community. Because I think that is also Livingston.
But that's pretty universal.
I don't know that it is. I don't know that all Montana towns are welcoming and inclusive. I definitely think that that's not something all towns of our size in Montana are known for. Like, I think we are welcoming, like we're hospitable and we welcome not everybody welcomes new people, but a lot of us do. And we certainly welcome like our visitors and our guests. And I think that there's generally like a culture of people welcoming new people to this town to sign up and join up and get involved. I think that's part of who we are.
Actually, I'm an example of that.
And I like that you changed it to caring. I think that that's also nice, Wyeth, because it's good.
I think you said caring, but maybe that's what I heard. I don't know.
Well, I was like welcoming, but I think that both sound good to me.
Well, what doesn't welcoming imply caring? You can't welcome somebody and not care about it.
That'd be a little weird. I just wanted to maybe, I did a slide where I got rid of all the statements and I just put the big topics up here because at the core, I think this is actually the real thing we're talking about. And I don't know if I've got really an outcome for this, but I thought it would be good to see it from maybe a different angle. And now that we've kind of had this vision discussion, which I think, frankly, I think someone needs to take a crack at some language on the vision if somebody feels passionate about it. And I think we've got enough of these concepts now, and we want to try not to hang too many ornaments on the tree, but I think we're getting pretty close.
Well, okay, what are the ornaments on the tree? What are the components of that vision statement? I think
I think that the historic value or character is probably definitely in there. And I think that incorporates the nature, the Western downtown, those kind of things are all sort of wrapped in there. I think there's a city surrounded by nature and the environment in there.
That's a critical thing.
And then I think there's some sort of fair and equitable application. And there's something about caring and inclusivity there. And I think that's
the fair application is sort of how you do it. It isn't the vision.
Yep. And maybe that's a value and not a vision. You're
I don't
correct.
think that's in the visions. The vision
That's right.
tries to describe what you want to be and where you want to go.
Yep. And I think there's probably something really close to that. And I think, if you look at Toronto's, which I understand Toronto as a city, this isn't really us, but it's very clear, right? we're a caring city, we're clean, green, sustainable, we're dynamic, and we invest in the quality of life. And their mission is just to serve a great city and its people, right? Really, really simple.
If you say, and I'm going to try this, a welcoming community, continuing his historic tradition in the landscape. I did, just trying to get like 4 thoughts in a couple of sentences. I mean, that's not crafted very well, but something like that. Would there be any more concepts you'd want to include in that kind of a statement?
Why not something just simple like we want our citizens to love where they live?
Because that's an opinionated statement, right? So the definition of love is different for each individual. It makes too hard of a guideline. It doesn't mean.
Sure.
I think we're talking about something that's more consistent than that. We want to maintain the existing character of what it is. We want it to stay within itself, not go without itself. And to maintain that landscape quality. And we want that to be welcoming. And welcoming can sort of, we welcome change. We want that change to be consistent with history, and we want to maintain ourselves as a city in the landscape.
The only thing the only other
caring and loving are all kind of in the same thing. They're all sort of emotions or opinions, I'll say.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with welcoming? It's a positive word. It's got a positive connotation. It means you care. It means that you're sympathetic to other people. And you don't need to add a bunch of words to that. I thought it was an excellent word that Melissa brought up.
Yeah, Tom, you asked, is there any other kind of major idea that we'd want to include? I think the only one I would want to include, mainly because I remember when it wasn't this way, and I think it needs to be economically vibrant.
Amen.
Because when I moved here in 2004 and it was not, this place was freaking scary, Tom. I mean, it was.
I've been through. I've been around here since the early 90s.
And the 90s were like, it was a drug stopover.
Well,
I mean, you had sheriffs getting busted by the FBI for trafficking drugs. I mean,
it wasn't that far after the railroad pulled out.
That's right. And but that connection to economic viability is really important.
Okay, so how about this, Wyatt? How about welcoming, inclusive community? With, you said economic vitality.
Yeah.
A welcoming, economically vital community. Fewer words.
Continuing its historic.
So let's start with welcoming, economically vital community. We need something that describes that sort of compact historic continuity, and we need that statement about the landscape. And I think crafting that into words. I don't know who's the best wordsmith around here, but I think there's our vision statement. Is there anything else that wants to be in it, or is that it?
Welcoming, economically vibrant. I mean, there's going to have to be some commas here. Welcoming, comma, economically vibrant.
I like bullets.
I'm just trying to get.
Tom, just let me finish, please. And then inclusive also. I think welcoming and inclusive are not the same. Continuing, I'm not sold on the historic tradition. I mean, I'm sold on the concept, but something about the language I think could be improved. With respect to the something about the respecting the landscape, or we have to include that part is what's missing.
I don't know how to say
in touch with our natural environment.
Actually, I heard one phrase, dominated by the environment, not dominating it. I don't know who said that the other day, but I was like, yeah, I like your surrounded concept though a lot, because it's like arms, right? Like kind of like coming around you. I like that concept.
We're in, the natural open space. We're a place within the natural open space. I don't know how to say this, but we're sort of working around four concepts: welcoming and inclusive, economically vibrant, continuing historic traditions with the physicality of the city, and maintaining its relationship to the open land.
Ooh,
I think those are the four things that are in there. I'm not sure how to say them.
I want to honor something though that James brought up and figure out if there's a way to include his ideas. Like James said something like where people love to live, which I understand could be subjective, but I think the concept that it sort of gets at this other concept that we've been talking about, where people do love to live here and they love to be involved because we have a really strong sense of community that's not found everywhere in Montana. And so I wonder if we could maybe like explore that for a minute. I know we only have like 9 minutes left, but I wanted to honor that
Good
James
work.
brought that up, and it is a thing that we want also people to love to live here.
Well, could that be a part of that sort of the historic character of the town? I mean, and I'm not sure how to say it, but it's sort of what the town is within itself. This object of the landscape has a character that we all love to live in, and that's, because it has alleys. But
yeah, I mean, let's just put it down here.
Okay, James, could you maybe like help, like, I don't know, just share a little bit more about what you were thinking when you said that? Because I think there's something to it.
Well, Broadus is known as the wavingest town, right? Drive through, they got a billboard that says the wavingest town. Battle Mountain, Nevada is not. It is not the wavingest town, and it sucks. There are people that move here and love to live here and that want to be here. Not that we're necessarily born here and this is all they've known, but that have chosen to become part of this community with us. And I feel like that's the essence of what we want in our neighborhood, is people that we like to live around and people that like to live around us. And so we build this community together to make this place that we all love to live. And there might be some things I don't agree with necessarily, some things you don't necessarily agree with, but together we still love living here. That whether that's the rhythm of the alley, whether it's the buildings downtown, whether it's what the next subdivision is going to look like, where the next railroad is, what the next business to come into town is going to be. We want all of that to mesh and come together in this framework of both the plan that we have, but also the town that we love. And I think that's just kind of me trying to get the words out. I think there's other ways to parse it out, but that's just how it kind of stood to me.
I mean, one of those four components is the town itself and the character of that town and why we all want to live here. You have welcoming, economy, what the town is, and where it is in the landscape. I'm searching.
I think there might be more. I almost hear like this idea too of like how people come here, they engage and they get engagement back. Like that's part of, like, people come here, they fall in love, the town falls in love with them. They it's this whole, I don't know. It's hard to put words to it, but it's like this.
Or does some of these ideas come into some of the later statements we're going to make? This is just the first mission statement. We don't want it to have too many things in it, not too many moving parts. It wants to distill the essence, not describe everything. That's for the rest of it to do.
I think it's applicable if you think it's a future state, like it's a destination. I think it's important to maybe think about including it. Some language nowadays too is, well, it's been robbed of its true Webster's definitional language, and it's become sort of like just jargony. And I think we should try to avoid, like, I don't know, if you've ever watched Mad Men, they always try to add love into every slogan in the show. And he's like, there's that word again, because it's like, what does it really mean? Nobody really knows what, I mean, I think there's a better way to maybe express it.
Yeah, the word very is a terrible
Yeah.
adjective. That's the laziest word I can use when I'm writing.
Maybe like something with like, well, I have a couple things. One thing that I figured out about why historic is bothering me, and then getting at what James was saying, like maybe something about like the words like dynamic and engaging, like that's kind of some sentiments that I'm hearing when I was listening to James. And we probably don't have to figure it all out today either. We could probably put a pin in some of these things. But I was thinking of like dynamic and engaging, like it's like a action. Like people love living in Livingston is more of like a verb than a sentiment, right? It's like and the other thing with the historic character, I think everyone that lives here recognizes, and whether we talk about it or not, we know about the layered history of this place and how important this landscape is, not just to the people who live here now, but the people who have lived here before Livingston had a name and before there were brick buildings downtown, right? Like the layered history of this place, like back to the first people that lived on this continent, some of the first people on this continent, right? Like it goes way back in Park County. We have like a really long history, we being humans in this place. And so I wonder if we could add something about layered history. So it's not so colonial settler feeling, even though that is part of our history also. There's a history of Livingston before it had the name Livingston and before it was a place that was settled because of the railroad. And that's also something that a lot of people in this community honor, is that like the far back roots of this place and the meaning and importance of this place before it was even Livingston. I think, I don't know how to put it in words more briefly.
Well,
right
if you
now.
just don't like the word history because it feels colonial, we could go with.
No, I think like layered history, because I think history is important, but there's like lots of like layers of history. Like right now, like even the railroad and what happened in the 80s was a part of Livingston, and what's happening now is like another layer, and it's like gonna change and evolve like it has.
I don't want to lose
Character.
what I was hoping for with that statement, which was really kind of about applying the characteristical elements that have been created over time to the future.
Like the
right?
design elements, like the
It's
physical.
not just design, but like, you know, the way we think about, there's a lot of different, like take how many nonprofits we have in the town, take how many small business owners we have, right? These are all manifestations that have come out of a historical past that I'd like to preserve. The design elements are part of that, but there's an interesting element to sort of like the character of the city that should continue forward.
Well, maybe
right?
maybe then like for me, thinking about the history and its historic character, because the history is more than just like the built structures. Does that make sense? And there's so much more than just like the dominant culture built design of Livingston. And that's part of just being inclusive, I think, for me, is like.
Yeah, for me, those are two very different thoughts that are being wrapped around the word history, which aren't necessarily meaning the same thing to me. Like I could just drop the word historic and just say character, right? We want to honor our character is really what I'm trying to say. Like it's not about, I mean, we can go back to the alley example. I think that's great, but like it's just that sort of like fundamental building block. These are the things we all enjoy what we have because there's been a whole lot of building blocks that have gotten us here. Let's just keep that stuff going forward was kind of where I was at.
No, I appreciate you.
I really agree with, as you guys were talking, the word history becomes less important. And we don't want to mimic the past. We want to have it evolve. We want the character to continue, which is why I like that word.
Yeah.
Okay,
We don't.
I
want-
have
we
to-
don't- we don't-
it's,
we don't-
it's 2:00 and we're only scheduled to be here till 2:00. I'm so sorry to be abrupt. But this is awesome and I appreciate all of you. We need to end, I think, with, I need to
Do we
see
have
my
any-
screen.
Public? I can't see anything.
No, I'm gonna ask you to stop screen sharing if you can, just so I
Yep,
can.
yep.
Sorry, the screen is not my friend today, so I'm gonna
There
go
you go.
back to the agenda. Where's the agenda?
Member comments and then
I
public
think,
comments.
James, do we have any, I don't see any public here, so do we have any member comments?
Isn't this all
Anyone?
member comment?
None here.
Any
Yeah,
of you?
it's all member.
It's all member comments, okay.
I'm
and
done
then-
commenting.
James, I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda. Is the next thing to adjourn?
Now I can't even get out of.
Yes, it is the next
Yes.
thing to adjourn.
Thank you, guys.
Member
Okay,
comments, public comments, motion to close.
okay, I appreciate you all. This is like awesome, awesome conversation. And Wyeth, will you just send us the next homework assignment and
I will.
we'll keep wading through this.
I won't be
Also-
here. I won't be here next week.
Okay.
But I'm sure you guys are capable of having the conversation without me.
One thing that would be good is if we.
I
could-
have a 2:00 meeting that I'm already late to. I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Taking it.
Second, so motion by Wyatt, second by James. I'm so sorry, Tom, and let's please put a pin in it and we'll come back to it the next time we meet.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you guys so much. Have a good week.
Yep, you too. Have a good.
All right.
See you, Tom. Have a good.
See you later.